President Trump is renewing his attention to the Russia-Ukraine war at the G7 summit this week. Joining us now to discuss is Kervin O'Quinn, former lead intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army and host of the This Week Explained podcast. So, Kervin, always good to have you here. So I wanted to talk to you about the Ukraine war, because we've already talked about the Iran war with our previous guest. So if we're comparing the Iran war with the Ukraine war, do you think the Ukraine war is a bit easier to deal with in terms of trying to end it? President Trump says he wants it stopped because it doesn't impact the U.S. Because it's in Europe, right? And we're not sending them any weapons for free. So does Trump have more room to deal with this Ukraine war and more time as well?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on again, Don. Always good to talk to you. And I think you're absolutely right. Look, there's more flexibility here for President Trump. There's more time to deal with this because this is a European problem. It became a U.S. problem as we were sending weapons to Ukraine, but Trump has kind of paused that, and as he said, sending weapons that Europeans pay for to give to Ukraine. So a little bit of flexibility there, but is it easier to come to a deal? I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to come to a deal between Russia and Ukraine because you have two entities who do not want to talk to each other. You have President Zelensky and President Putin who are refusing to talk to each other, and rightfully so. Neither man trusts the other man. And then you have a mediator this time in President Trump who is trying to force a deal upon them just to stop the fighting there. So it's a little bit different there than what we saw with the U.S. in Iran, and how in retrospect, right, it was 2022 we're talking about with Russia invading Ukraine. So in retrospect of that, the U.S.-Iran deal came very much quicker than this Ukraine-Russia deal will be coming along.
Okay, so you're saying the two men, they don't want to talk to each other, Putin and Zelensky. Where do we stand right now in this Russia-Ukraine war? Is Russia winning? Is Ukraine doing well? What is the situation?
Yeah, very interestingly, over the last few months, Ukraine has made some huge wins on the battlefield. They've made huge wins in getting through the Russian border. They are attacking Russia in St. Petersburg and Moscow, places where it is no longer just Russian soldiers who are feeling the heat of the battle, but the Russian people. And I think that is putting a lot of pressure on President Putin. Not enough pressure right now to get him to the negotiating table, but you're starting to hear President Putin change some of his tone. He's not calling Zelensky a clown. He's not using nicknames for the Ukrainians. He is again taking a lighter tone. So Ukraine is really hitting back. They're making some strides now in this war of attrition that even I assessed would be a benefit for Russia is now turning into a benefit for Ukraine because they've learned the drone warfare and how drone warfare can be used on the battlefield to improve a military standing.
Okay, so in this war of attrition where Ukraine is making some strides, as you said, what is it going to cost Russia if its objective is to fully take over Ukraine? What are the costs of that?
I think the cost is going to be everything. We're getting to the point now where Russia absolutely cannot, at any point, make that move on Kyiv, take over Ukraine. They are firmly entrenched in the front lines that they have now in eastern Ukraine, and they're trying to hold that so that they can gain that, uh, hopefully gain a little bit more of the land there, and then pause this conflict, recalibrate, get their troop numbers back up, and then make another go at it. So if they were to try right now, it's going to take everything. Russia is not only losing right now in Ukraine, they're also losing in the Western Sahel of Africa, where the Russia's Africa Corps is now losing in a country like Mali. So there's a lot of losses going on for Russia right now, and they don't have enough resources currently to push back against that.
Is there any chance that Putin will actually lose interest in this war if it drags on for years, for example?
Now that's an interesting question. I don't know if he'll lose interest in it, or if someone like Xi Jinping will come over and say he needs to stop. That's going to be the pressure point right there. If this goes on, a few more years. Let's say we've got a few more years of this. We've got President Trump out of office because his term is over. What does Xi Jinping then say to Putin? Does he say, "Stop your silly military"? Special military operation because I need to start something within the Pacific? Or does Putin convince Xi to combine efforts to overtake Ukraine much quicker so that that follow on to Finland or Poland or one of those other countries then comes along a lot quicker?
Right. I asked that question because I know Putin was very strong. He really wanted Ukraine at the beginning. He had strong desires for Ukraine. I'm just wondering if that desire has eroded over time. Right now, as we speak, is there anything Russia wants more than Ukraine? Because if President Trump wants to put an end to this war, you have to propose to Putin something, whether it's a threat or an incentive that's bigger than Ukraine. Is there anything right now?
As of this moment, I don't know. It's the ability for Russia to look like a global power could be something that's a little bit bigger. I think if so the issue here is that it's not just Putin who has to agree. Zelensky's going to have to agree, and I do think at this point Putin would agree to the front lines at their current state, along with some of the other lands in Luhansk and Donetsk and Zaporizhia, the Zaporizhia power plant. All of those things, all of that was given to Putin. I think he would agree to it. The problem here is that Zelensky and the Ukrainians are not going to agree to that. That is a red line for them. And so we do have these two competing leaders who just will not come to a compromise.
So do you think it's a higher chance that this war will not end, or it's a higher chance that President Trump can find some kind of middle ground or a deal?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's going to be up to, and I think this is going to be something that Marco Rubio is going to be very much involved in. Um, I don't know if he's going to be able to get those two to agree to something. If he does, that's going to be a huge win globally. So right now, my assessment is that uh, in the next few months, are we going to see a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia? I have that as unlikely. And are we going to see Russia increase attacks into Ukraine to try to gain more ground? My assessment there is that is highly likely.
All right, Kervin, just one more question here. The vice president of the European Commission said the bloc has verified reports that China's military has been training Russian military personnel to fight in Ukraine. Speak to us about what has been China's role in this war.
Yeah, look, this is part of the Axis, right? So China's been very much a part of this war behind the scenes. This report came out in Reuters about a month ago, and this has been known in the intelligence community for a while that China is training Russia on Chinese equipment so that they can take that Chinese equipment. Think drones in this case. Those first, the FVP drones. And this is all training, and you do this through exercise, through military exercises, these combined military exercises. The U.S. does it with NATO countries. We've done it with Ukraine. We've done it with Israel. This is what you do so that those soldiers know how to use equipment that they don't normally use because they're not equipment that is native to their country. And so those Russian leaders, I would say, so it's a small group, 300 Russian soldiers went out to China to train on these specific uh, these specific weapons, a drone as a weapon, take that back to the battlefield, train their subordinates so that they are now able to use those Chinese munitions. And the way China gets around this is that, hey, this is just a Chinese company that makes this stuff. They can sell it to whoever they want, and it's sold over to the Russian military.
Okay, Kervin, always appreciate your insight, appreciate your time as well today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stay safe out there.